What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a new episode of It Came From Beyond the Video Store Shelves as we continue our journey into watching every movie that I've never seen before that's currently living in this massive VHS hoard that I keep building on. Anyway, this week we're going to be going back to 1989 and we're going to take a look at Edgar Allan Poe's Buried Alive. And when you're talking about this particular film, unfortunately, there was a lot of different films um, in this 80s, early 90s type date range with the name Buried Alive. There was quite a few. So you kind of have to be careful if you're going to try to seek out this particular film. Just make sure you tag that Edgar Allan Poe on top of Buried Alive, even though uh, it's safe to say that this was loosely based on the works of Poe. To be fair, this really doesn't have much to do with Edgar Allan Poe or his works, other than just loosely associated with it. Of course, they would just slap his name on the movie title to kind of build interest, try to maybe sell a couple copies. But anyway, this is going to be a RCA release. If I'm not mistaken, let's see if they have a date on this. Yeah, this is actually dated for 1990. This movie set shelved for 2 years, 2+ years before it was actually physically released. And honestly, I'm not going to have a whole bunch to say about this, but let's get into what I thought about Buried Alive. Um, okay, so this movie opens with, you're at this, I guess it would be considered a halfway, no, well, not really a halfway house, like it's an institute for mentally ill, you know, teenage women. So it's like a youth home, I guess you would consider it. And anyway, the movie starts off with one of these ladies deciding that she was going to leave. She was going to escape this youth home, and she makes it into the woods, and then she gets trapped and attacked by this mass killer wearing a very cheap, painted, like crappy looking Ronald Reagan mask. Um, I'm not sure if they were trying to make a statement with that. A lot of people blamed Reagan for shutting down, federal funding to these massive mental health institutions and shit, you know, which a lot of people kind of saw that in a negative light where he wanted more of the mental health stuff to be done locally instead of on a federal level, almost kind of similar to like the prison system. But anyway, not to get into all that or any of that bullshit. Yeah, the killer was wearing a Reagan mask, and they attacked this woman, and then he opens some kind of trap door, and they go into the basement underneath this institution, and they so it opens with that, and then we gonna cut back to the next day or whatever, and we get to meet Janet, and Janet is going to be a new teacher at this facility that's ran by this Dr. Gary. So Janet meets Gary at some kind of seminar that he's hosting or whatnot, and she really thinks that he's on to something with his views and his ideas of how to treat mental illness or whatnot, and she's really excited about what he's doing at this Ravenscroft Institute that he's running, and she wanted to be part of this. So she goes and she meets up with Dr. Gary and becomes employed as a teacher there. So she's going to go and try to help these young ladies out. But as soon as she kind of gets there, strange things start happening to Janet. She starts having, weird nightmares, and she's hearing shit and all this stuff. And these young ladies are starting to disappear. And, Gary keeps telling her that they're runaways, that this one ran away and this one ran away, but nothing, you know, ever comes, of anything. There's no really proof of where they went. They just kind of disappeared. And the whole time, Janet's having these visions and these nightmares, and she's, you know, starting to become more and more, you know, suspect. She becomes suspicious about what's really going on, and if these students, these little, these girls are really running away, or something happening to them. And that's pretty much the gist of this whole movie. There's just not a whole bunch going on, and the things that are going on is just not done well. We see a bunch of, the killer running around in his Reagan mask, but it's really not done in a slasher type manner, where they could have just made it, kind of a straight up slasher film with this mass killer, and honestly, it probably would have been much of a better movie because it's almost, it's like they attempted. I don't know if it's because they slapped Poe's name on this, and they were just really kind of marketing this movie as a Edgar Allan Poe kind of experience and film, which it's not. But it's really has, like, they tried to get like this art housey feel to it, where there's just strange, dialogue, and you know actors are acting strange. Like of course Donald plays on is in this movie, and he plays uh, another professor at this facility, and it's obvious through the whole thing that he was a mental patient. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. Halloween, it was not. I wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have played that part personally, because it didn't come off looking good for Donald at all in this film. But yeah, it they just real art housey, man. It's just weird zooms and weird focus points and shit on the actual filming of but it didn't help the film at all. It didn't make it better or edgy or anything. Really, the only somewhat decent murder or killing scene in this movie is at one point one of these young ladies was in the kitchen, and she was using like an electronic handheld, like egg beater or whisker or whatever the fuck you would call it. She was trying to use this machine to curl her hair, and the killer walked in and just cranked this thing up all the way, and it scalped her. It took her whole top of her head off, ripped all her hair out and shit. That was pretty cool. I do give it credit for that. That was a pretty cool scene. Um, but other than that, it just there wasn't really much going on here. Long story short, um, this Dr. Gary, his father started this clinic, and I guess he wasn't a good dad, and he kind of fucked him up as a kid or whatever. So now the doctor, any patient that kind of goes against him, he just brings them in the basement and like buries them alive, basically behind these cement walls. Some of them he buried neck deep and filled with concrete and shit, and really for no you know good reason. He they kind of allude to maybe his father locked him up as a child, and that's how he dealt with his mental issues. So in a way, he's trying to help people by burying them alive. But I don't know. They don't really get into it. It doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense. Of course, Janet discovers all this, and she kind of discovers what's going on, and you know, just a couple minutes into this movie, you kind of already know what direction it's going and what's going to be going on here, and the truth behind the scenes. So it's no there's no big reveal when it actually happens. Violence wise and shit, it just wasn't done well. The story just wasn't done well. It was just filmed weird, like they were trying to do this edgy art house film style when they made the movie. Um, it just didn't work. It just didn't work out. It could have been a much cooler movie. It could have been way better. It definitely had star power. I mean, you got Robert Vaughn playing Dr. Gary, which he was in a bunch of shit. You got Donald Pleasance, so, from Halloween and all that kind of shit that he was in. He's a great actor. He was not used well at all in this. You have John Carradine's in this film. There's a bunch of star power in this movie. It just was not utilized well at all. Um, yeah, I mean, I made it through, but it's not something I would ever watch again. I wouldn't recommend somebody watching this. I'd probably give it a 2 out of 5. You know, well, 2 out of 10. Just mainly because of that one scene with the fucking, the hand beater where they ripped this chick's head off. That was pretty cool. That was really the only good scene in the whole movie. I mean, you have this killer running around in the Reagan mask. It wasn't even a good looking Reagan mask. You know, it could have been a really cool slasher flick, but they tried to go this weird direction with it, and it just not only ruined the movie, but just did not do well. You know, it just wasn't handled well. Even the whole reveal, like you knew what was up halfway through the movie. You knew what was up very early on. So, and that's kind of what you want whenever you're looking at a slasher film. You kind of need that big reveal of who's behind the mask, and the big unmasking scene, the Scooby Doo shit. There was no Scooby Doo shit in this movie. I mean, halfway through, you kind of realize who it is, and then they just give up on the mask completely. They never really explain why he was wearing the mask in the first fucking place, or even if it was him in the mask. It's just, at one point, Janet discovers that it was him, and they just kind of throw everything else out the window. But yeah, that's pretty much the story of Buried Alive. I didn't enjoy it. Had the potential to be really good, but it wasn't. It's gonna just remain, kind of a lost horror film, from the early '90s, late '80s. I wouldn't believe that you would have many fans of this that's sitting back like, oh, fucking Edgar Allan Poe's Buried Alive is my favorite horror film. I don't see that happening. But, I could be wrong. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you watched this and you really dug it. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. It wasn't for me, It wasn't my type of thing. It just was not done well. Nothing really about this. Even the cover, I mean, that's just like basic ass. And that's kind of why this sat on the shelf for so long. I've had this movie for quite some time, and it's just like nothing is really appealing to me about this movie, and it's, the cover's basic. The back of this box, it's almost, I don't know if you guys could see that really super well or not, but it almost has like almost a Psycho-esque kind of back layout where, it's more of like geared towards a thriller aspect more than like a horror movie. So yeah, nothing about this box was appealing, but it is something that I've been sitting on a long time, and it's something I haven't watched. It's actually one of a bunch of buried alives that I haven't seen, which I'm probably gonna go ahead and go through all of them because I have three of these movies named Buried Alive sitting next to each other, and all three of them are different, and they all have the same name. So that'd be kind of cool. And maybe one of them's good. This one was not. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this week, man. Stay tuned. Got a shitload of tapes left. I'm not quite sure what movie I'm going to do next week, but I just bought a bunch of cool looking horror flicks that I haven't seen. So yeah, we're probably gonna dive into that, and we'll try to maybe find a good movie next week. But this one was a waste of my time. Like I said, 2 out of 10. I wouldn't waste your time tracking this down. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. I doubt that any company would have went through the trouble of putting this on Blu-ray, but I could be wrong. So yeah, man, until next time, thank you guys for hanging around, and we'll see you next week, hopefully with a good movie for once. So yeah, take it easy.